gosh, you know, this is the 10th London School in the Black Child, and I can't believe I've been to every one. That's why I'm emeritus now. I've done mine. I've been here long enough. And how many of you are teachers? Parents. Parent teachers. Can I just say that being a black teacher is a very rare thing. There are only 6% of black and minority ethnic teachers in this country. So 93.7% of teachers are white. So your likelihood that your child will be taught by a white teacher is extremely high. And I want to talk to you today about the need for black teacher educators and the kind of issues that arise for them. And I want to think about a way forward about anti-racist teacher training, because I think that this is another crisis that we haven't really talked about as well, the crisis in black teacher educators. So here we have a situation that in our schools, about 25% of the pupils in our state-funded schools are now from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. And in some schools, like in London, you can have up to 60% of the pupils, maybe from an African Caribbean background. I've just done research in a Muslim girls' school, 97% Muslim Bangladeshis, girls. And so you can have enormous concentrations of particular minority ethnic groups in a school, but all white teachers. Now, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with all white teachers. What we want are really good teachers. But there's a sense in which we need to think through what the implications are for there not being enough black and minority ethnic teachers. Now, I know here we are at the Institute of Education, and I've been a member of staff here. I'm no longer now retired. In the 6 years that I've been here and doing research looking at black teacher educators, they are more likely to drop out of their teacher training. So whereas 12% of white staff drop out of their courses, 24% of black and white where issues about what we call cultural capital, the sense in which they feel at ease in these institutions and on the courses. They often say, as Bourdieu, one of our social theorists, says, is this a place for me? And this is how people become excluded. So it's a process of how you feel in an institution that's really important. And then even when they become teachers, there are issues when they become part of the established teaching force about staying in and remaining teachers. There's this, they alluded to this, the equality duties in schools. There is this sense in which we become targets. Our bodies in ourselves become, if you like, the lightning rods for equality, and we're expected to be all things for all people. You might be the only black teacher in the school, and you get all, I see people are smiling, that you get to be the equality officer, you have to deal with the parents who are angry, and you don't get to progress your careers. So there is a sense in which there is an exhaustion, a complete tiredness about wanting to maintain that as a profession. So we have a situation where the white staff don't feel comfortable with teaching the black and minority ethnic children as well. And the government's own survey of newly qualified teachers shows us that 60% of teachers, this is white, mainly white teachers as they're 97% of the teaching workforce, don't feel prepared to teach in diverse classrooms in the inner city. And I know this because being here, I would be asked to do, and I'm sure Dave, you were asked to do, the 2-hour session on diversity on a complete, 1-year PGCE. There is no government standard for what diversity should look like in the teacher education curriculum. And I think that that's a huge gap that we are not looking at. What are we being taught? What are teachers being taught? So it's not just what children are being taught, but what are we learning, what are teachers being taught? So there are, I would argue, not just a moral case for more black teachers, and by that I'm saying, you know, it's a good in itself, oh, we need more diversity. I would also argue that it isn't just a business case. That's a very big driver of equality in our equality discourses. Oh yes, we have to be more global in our outlook. We need diversity to attract more international business, and we need diversity as a good business model. So I would argue we don't need more black teachers for that reason. And I'd also argue we simply don't need them just to be role models, because that's the kind of what we might call essentialism. You know what I mean by that? It means that we're just saying, oh, only black people could teach other black people, and therefore once you get black people in the as teachers, all your problems will be solved. That is not the case. What I want to argue is something that Paulo Freire, and I don't know that many of you might know who Paulo Freire is. He was a Brazilian visionary to do with labor movements and pedagogy, the way you teach and learn, and how the everyday people, the workers, understand meaning and change the world through learning by doing. And he said, what we really need is the consciousization, to raise the consciousness of black teachers and of white teachers, so that we can have a movement for radical social justice. So it's about having a case for social justice rather than just having a race case, oh, we need more black teachers. So we need these new intellectuals, new knowledge production. By that I mean we think differently. By being there, we learn to think differently. And that's how institutions change. They have you on board and they use, or you bring your experience in order to change a place. I was just talking to Karen Edge, who's doing some research here, and I know Rosemary, you are working with her, and she's looking at leadership, and gender and class issues to do with young leaders who become leaders in schools. And the reason that we have this rise in young leaders in schools, she was telling me, is that the old leaders are burnt out and leaving. So people in their 20s and 30s are becoming head teachers. And the women are sacrificing their good childbearing years, and they burn out as well. So, you know, there's a sense in which, you know, just having people there is not enough. We have to take care of them, and we have to build movements for social justice. One of my most favorite books is by somebody called Helen Casey, and she's written a book called I Answer With My Life. And it's about teacher educators. I hear Rosemary knows the book. It's about Catholic nuns who teach in the inner city, Jewish women, black Christian women, and she looks at these women and how they use education, not just simply to uplift the children, which they care very much about, but as education as what she calls reciprocity. I can never say the word. Reciprocity. So it's about sharing experiences that they bring, learning from the children, and then learning more and more. And it's the old civil rights movement, learning by doing. When the civil rights movement in the USA, when there was high rates of illiteracy and people couldn't read and write, it was by having this kind of flash mob, if you like, of people teaching other people and then changing the world. So she talks about, you know, our oral histories as sites of political change and political struggle, that our stories are important in order to initiate change. And I'm going to tell you one story. Just before I move on, because I've got 10 minutes. But I want to just say that the reason that so many black teachers go into teaching is something that Rosemary has written a fabulous book. I've forgotten the name of the book, but it is fabulous. Leading for Equity. And she talks about servant leadership, and that a lot of young black people and older black people go into teaching because it's a calling, it's a vocation in our communities. And then, you know, you become these community role models, as I was saying, that are exhausted. You become the cultural experts. But there are glass ceilings about promotion. And one of the interesting things is that black and minority ethnic people are more likely to go for promotion. Indeed, as lecturers in higher education, and I've just done a piece with The Guardian on that, that professors, we're more likely to go for professorships and more likely, 4 times more likely not to get it. And this is also the case in schools, that black staff go for a promotion and they're at least twice less likely to get it in schools. So there is racism in the classroom, there is exclusion in the staff room, and networks are the way in which people actually progress within institutions. And yet we don't have our networks. And if we do have our black networks, like here in the London School of the Black Child, we don't have our white colleagues, and they hold the power. So as I said, there was this huge debate in the USA about having black-only universities for that reason, that, you know, it's about the strength of weak ties. That's the theory around it, that you know people and they give you the leg up. But if you don't know them and you only know people in your own community, your power is then restricted. And we have that debate about black supplementary schools, we have it about our institutions, so we need to think about having a wider social justice agenda. I just want to talk to you a little bit about tackling racist beliefs, because if we're going to build a case for anti-racist education, this is about a piece of research, and I'm going to show you unashamedly my book, Respecting Difference, and there's some leaflets outside, but it's about race, faith and culture for teacher educators. And in this, I've got case studies, and I interviewed a lot of young, newly qualified teachers, and we had focus groups and so on. And they came, these white, newly qualified teachers, they came to the sessions because they really felt very deeply moved to want to understand about diversity. And one of the young men who was a science teacher, and David resonates with your thing about science, he was a science teacher, so all through his whole degree, was it 3-year degree, his postgraduate teacher training, he still had views like this about black boys. And he was teaching in a school, and he says black boys are underachieving as they're just not suited to academic work. And he was so convinced about this. And he was coming to the session because he wanted to help them. And he said the same genes that affect your IQ affect your skin color. Now he's a science teacher. He is somebody who cared enough to come to my session, and yet his whole education hadn't raised that boat, you know. I was so shocked. I have to say the other students had a go at him in the session. And one of them said, yeah, but she agreed with him and said, but why are all the 100-meter runners black and all the swimmers white, that old chestnut? So these views circulate, because we don't have pools in the Caribbean that we can access, unless you're white. But anyway, that's another story. So there's that whole sense in which, you know, we need to think about having strategies for anti-racist education. Can I just say that this student was really hurt by the attack that the other students, you know, did to him. And this is something that that I think we really need to talk about. It's this notion of white hurt, that white people, sorry Dave, can be hurt by pedagogies of experience. So when we say, listen, I'm black and I know what it's like to be discriminated against, they go, well, I'm white and I know what it feels like to be, you know, to be discriminated against, and, you know, working class issues are high on the agenda. So everybody is trying to get the moral high ground. Right. Everybody is hurt. And we have these pedagogies of hurt, pedagogies of experience that circulate, and everybody has a claim to it. And that is the danger of sometimes just situating yourself, just simply saying, I'm black and I know. We need to have really radical social justice agendas that bring our white colleagues on board. That's the only way forward, because we're an ever-decreasing minority. We're growing in numbers, but in terms of our movement, we need to have to reach out. Just final points. Good practice in initial teacher education. Well, we need to have the anti-racist teacher training, as I just described. What the white teachers were saying, teacher trainers were saying, we need a space to feel safe, that we could say things like that young man was saying, and understand them without being shut down. Otherwise, we won't go there. So we need safe places for discussions. We need people that are confident in the skills. There was a colleague there, and she was describing that when she was doing her teacher training, she wanted to discuss issues about Islamophobia, and the tutor didn't want to go there. You want to discuss issues about race in the classroom, and we your teachers and your tutors, but they don't feel confident to do that. We need to have these inclusive classroom pedagogies and curricula, and we need national legislation to support that. And finally, we need leadership, and I know Rosemary's going to talk to you about that, but we need whole school leadership, where the whole school is raised up in order to change. That it isn't just particular pilots for black and minority ethnic children, where they're focused on and looked upon, but we do need a whole school approach. And we do need to think about how we can do that. And I know Rosemary will do that. But thank you very much for listening.